We are good.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. How are we doing today? Good? Great. My name is Neon. This is
Cassidy.
Victor.
all right. Together we are forensics. Forensics. So today we're going to talk about our digital forensics application. It's called Digital Evidence Collection. Our clients are Shane Thompson from the DX Hub, Cal Poly DX Hub in the Technology Park, and also Rob Swift. He's from the Central Coast Cyber Forensics Lab. Fun fact, he used to be the FBI director. So yeah. A little bit about us. We are three aspiring computer engineering students from Cal Poly. Our mutual interest in digital forensics, as well as our desire to make the world a better place, have formed us into a team forensics under Dr. Oliver guidance. So before we dive into the application, we want to talk about who our customer is. The application will primarily be used by law enforcement, specifically first responder when there's a crime scene, and hopefully also a crime scene investigator that come to the crime scene post-forward. The product will first be delivered to the people at the Central Coast Cyber Forensics Laboratory and California Cybersecurity Institute for evaluation. After that, if it's deemed good enough, it will be distributed to law enforcement nationally. So why do we need this app? So technology is constantly evolving, and even for the most tech-savvy person, it's hard to keep track of all the phones, all the game consoles, all the laptops is constantly releasing. They get released every month, actually every day too. So it's already hard to keep track of all of these, let alone actually extracting data from them for them to be usable in court. So the goal of our application is to aid law enforcement in identifying these digital devices so that we can walk them through step by step to ensure proper digital evidence collection so that they can actually be used in court. Otherwise, they're not going to be valid evidence, and that can change the whole verdict of a court.
So what are the main requirements of our product? So a simple and intuitive user interface. We want to make sure that our application is usable by anyone, no matter how technically inclined they are. We want to have a 24/7 uptime as close as we can. It needs to be maintained specifically for our stakeholders, since law enforcement works around the clock. Also, after ethical considerations, we decided that we did not want to store data locally on the device, because some police officers use their personal devices for this application, and then in that case, we found that there's legal consequences to where the defense could actually say that their phone is evidence because it was used in that case. So we want to avoid that conflict for them. Also, the application needs to be able to detect automatically changes from a database. So we have a company, MSAB, that's providing us all this content and updates themselves, all of the devices that get added every day, all of the micro updates that come out, and we want to be able to pull that data automatically for the application. And then also, it is especially crucial that it works with it when it doesn't have connectivity. So in terms of being able to protect law enforcement, making sure that if the device can't connect to send out the information, that it sends it to a law enforcement issued device, so that prevents the legality reasons, but also that it's still fully functional, so that if they're at a crime scene that's at a location without connectivity, they're still able to properly collect the evidence that they need. This is the UI UX design that was first provided by our clients. It was a constraint to consider kind of the terms of design look and the envision functionality they had for the application. The proposal was originally placed through a variety of prototypes and feedback with actual law enforcement, as well as digital forensics experts locally in the SLO area. And then based on this model, our team needed to take this further into consideration and kind of decide the feasibility of the design as well as the content that was going to be available, since our content's provided by like a third party, if they actually have the content that we want to place on our application. From there, we did brainstorming processes to further, as a result, conclude like the different features of the application. So our team discussed through our brainstorming using a decision matrix what type of application features were most important and should be applied in our first iteration of the application. So some important criteria was alignment with like our client needs, desirability with our team and like our capabilities, as well as the viability in terms of time for 2 quarters and our experience. So we found that the dynamically updating content and emailing completed steps were the most important for the first iteration, because this is what we need in order to make sure that they properly are able to collect evidence. But some of the features, such as computer vision, are something that are going to be added in future iterations, whether that be the end or in a future capstone project.
All right, how are we tackling this? So we're using Java for Android application development. And some of our expertise and feedback is from MSAB, which is a global leader in digital forensics. And Shane Thompson, he's kind of like, is he your client? Yeah, he's our client. But he also provides us with like what AWS modules to use and if it's logical. And then Rob Swift is the Central Coast Cyber Forensics Laboratory manager. And then this is our system architecture right here. So AppSync, what it does is it allows offline usage by caching data in that. And then number 2 is CloudWatch. CloudWatch pretty much is like cron jobs. If any of you guys used it, it pretty much, you can schedule events to happen. Like if you want to like call a GET method off an API, you can use that using CloudWatch. And pretty much like what we're assuming right now is that MSAB has an API, and for the autonomous data usage, we're going to use CloudWatch to check if there is a change in data. And if there is a change in data, we're going to trigger a Lambda function and then store that new data in S3. And then if there is a change in S3, we're going to use another Lambda function to store it in DynamoDB, which pretty much is it's pretty much like a hash map, kind of. So you got your keys, and then you got your values. And our vision is the key is the name of the device, and then the value is the reference to that image stored in S3. And then CloudFront, what it does, it's on number 5, is it is used to have the data more localized to the user. And then for number 6, we're using Elasticsearch for like searching for the device on the phone. And then Cognito, what it does is it allows security for users. So like, say for example, someone collects data on their phone and they want to send it to like a law enforcement department, they can use Cognito.
So for our next steps, the application is really heavily dependent on how the MSAB database is structured. We are assuming that we'll be given an API to access the database, but as of right now, due to some miscommunication between us, we still haven't figured out how the database is going to look like. So it's really dependent on how the database is. We may have to change our whole setup and our whole approach to the application itself. And also another thing that we want to implement by next quarter is also the 24/7 connectivity.
Thank you. Any questions?
What do you expect will be the hardest part of this?
I can say that.
Okay.
So the hardest part is also, it should be the database because our whole application revolve around it. We're going to demo it soon, but the way the application works is that it helps law enforcement see like what phone it is, and they're going to click on the application and see, okay, this is like Apple 10 or something like that. So the MSV database supposedly have photographic images and guides you to how like to tackle those devices. So it really depends on like, oh, do they have like photographic database? Do they have an API? Do they have like steps or something like that? Otherwise, we have to do like a bunch of web scraping, which we have to outsource all these kind of work too.
So where we currently stand, we basically have a shell of all of the user interface and like the backend as we imagine it. And then we have to see what API or like what form of the information they're actually going to give us to be able to like put that into the application if we have to adjust in terms of that.
So on your decision matrix, it was the features that you were going to implement, right? And so you chose 2 features.
So those
But
are.
it felt like that you talked about many of the features on that table.
So specifically, those are the 2 features that we're implementing during this iteration. Storing and collection data locally was turned down because of the ethical considerations. The dashboard is something that was going to be implemented in the future as a coordination between this project and actually collecting or doing forensics analysis itself. And we're implementing a profile in terms of the user has to have a profile to be able to send their information back to their department so that it's not stored like locally, but they're also interested in establishing collaboration profiles to where the departments can link them together as an overall. And then computer vision is more later on to be able to actually identify the phone just with an image.
Why are you doing it as this like continuously updating methodology rather than just like pushing updates into like the app store whenever there's like a significant body of new data to
Yeah, so basically it's based off of MSAB's micro updates. So they update their software whenever like new devices come out. So like how we just had, I don't know, the S10 and now the S11's coming out. We want to make sure the S11 like is in our application because it's actually the new devices that it's the most difficult for like officers to know how to handle. So rather than us maybe missing like pushing an update ourselves, we want to make sure it's dynamic. But then also with the clients that we have right now, it's more of a research facility and there wouldn't necessarily be a staff on hand to like constantly update the application. So we're trying to give them the best framework that allows them to not have to be as hands-on.